Continuing on this episode of Law Weekly, a conversation with the chairman of the Technical Committee on Conference Planning, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Osigwe, on the 2023 Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association, which started on Friday, August 25th in Abuja. Also showing on the program, foremost prosecutor with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Rotimi Jacobs, shares his views on criminal procedure and necessary reforms, plus a recap of some of the top trending legal stories in the news. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Shola Shieli. The much talked about 2023 Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association has kicked off in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Over 15,000 lawyers are expected at the conference, which is the largest gathering of lawyers on the continent. To shed more light on the dynamics of the conference and what participants can expect, my colleague Osigwe spoke to the chairman of the Technical Committee on Conference Planning, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Osigwe, who has been quoted as saying that the country has just experienced what is arguably the most contentious election cycle in our recent history and the first since the passing of the amended Electoral Act. He says this informed the theme of this year's Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association, Getting It Right, Charting the Course for Nigeria's Nation Building. We began by asking if the NBA had taken a collective decision on why the country appears not to be getting it right.
After many years of being an independent nation, Nigeria has managed to find a way of taking some steps forward and many steps backward. We have the dreams of our father, of the nation builders, our fathers at independence are yet to be realized. We've not built a nation. Our economy is not where it should be. Our ranking in many indexes of that you use in judging a nation have not been met. And we have remained a third world countries, and countries that were much better than at independence, or which became nations after we had become a nation, have moved from third world to first world status. And so Nigeria kept getting so many things wrong. And we feel that not necessarily because of election, but necessarily because of leadership. So that if Nigeria does certain things right, that Nigeria would be able to come out of the woods, as it were. Nigeria would be able to position itself among various nations and be reckoned with in whatever aspect you look at it. So, and we thought that having this conversation on the things Nigeria can do right will help Nigeria in going a long way to be where it should be, so that people will no longer refer to Nigeria as a sleeping giant. And some now say, no, we are not even a giant, much less a sleeping one. Bottom line is that we are not where we should be. We are not what we should be. And our people are not enjoying the dividends of democracy. If I may use that cliche, our people are suffering. No doubt we concede that in ruling a nation or in running a nation, difficult decisions must be made. People must make sacrifices. But there must be a meeting point between those sacrifices and those decisions for the people to be able to still make those sacrifices and still keep their heads high and live with dignity and be able to earn a living and their lives will be secured. Do not forget that Section 14.2 of the Constitution says that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary aim of government. So we've not got it right on the welfare of the people, we've not got it right on security, we've not got it right in fighting corruption, we've not got it right in engendering good governance. Our administration of justice is a far cry from what it should be. So on many parameters, we've not got it right. And we need to get it right for people to take us seriously, for us to be a destination point for foreign direct investment to flow into our country and for our currency to command some respect among other foreign currencies. Okay. And I could go on and on and on. But then you have another.
I was going to ask you to just highlight some of those things, some of those indices you think are contributing to this place where you say Nigeria is at the moment.
So if you ask me, I'll tell you one of it is corruption. And then we don't appoint or choose the right persons into elective offices. And our leaders sometimes lack vision as to what they want to achieve. They make so many nice-sounding electoral promises which are quickly forgotten. There are people who don't keep faith to the electoral promise. And then the Constitution, which in law says a ground number of our people, which should be a guide to public office holders, become meaningless after these public officers take office. So it's about amassing as much wealth as you can. And within a year or two of taking office, another round of campaign starts. So the people are effectively forgotten. Governance is effectively forgotten. And much spending is geared towards making those who aspire to be re-elected popular enough to be re-elected. And so people are talking about building up structures, giving us so much political patronage to the disadvantage of the people and their promises to the people as to what they would achieve in office. So our nation needs to be able to move like other nations, make our place attractive enough for people to want to come and invest in, make our place attractive enough for our youth to want to live here and not want to japa, or for people to think that the golden fleece is out there, while there's so much to be gained here. But then the government, successive governments, are unable to maximize the potentials of the people. And we said getting it right because a new government was just sworn in on May 29. And we thought that the conference should be like an agenda-setting conference for the new administration. We take stock. These are the things we didn't do well in. These are the things we could do better in order to make for a better Nigeria, to build for a better country for all of us to be in, so that we can all hold our heads and proudly say we are Nigerians, we rank among the best, or we're actually the best in Africa and maybe in the world. Okay.
We hear that the president has been invited as the guest of honor.
Yes, he has.
Is he coming?
Yes, we have confirmation that he will be attending, and we think that's quite interesting because the president, we believe, will use that as an opportunity to also give us some bird's eye view into some of the things he wants to do. He has said that in various speeches, no doubt. But there's also another opportunity to take a stage at our conference to also not only to speak to the lawyers in attendance, but to speak to the nation and to the world, as it were.
Are you guys planning a round table where lawyers can ask him questions easily, or is he just going to be speaking from the podium?
Well, the president will address us from the podium, but there will be opportunities for us to have the kind of conference you're talking about, but this will involve government officials. The president can't do everything by himself. So that's why he has ministers and advisors and aides. And they will come, hopefully. Some have confirmed that they are coming. And they will come and be able to have a conversation with us. And we believe frank talk about the things we can do to get it right in Nigeria, to make Nigeria a better country. So, yes, that kind of conversation will occur, but I'm afraid not personally with the president, but with his officials.
In recent times, we've had people talk about the fact that governments have not been obeying court orders as they should. We've seen that with the case of the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele. Sharp has also had cause to call out government on this issue. What would the lawyers be saying to the president or his team when you have those opportunities? What would they be saying to him as regards obedience to court orders?
Observance of due process of law brings respect to every nation and its people. So there will be topics that will deal with these judiciary expectations, government's obedience of court orders. And I believe we'll be able to tell ourselves the truth that if the government, the executive, disobeys orders of court, or the legislature, we demystify the courts, we belittle, we demean the courts, and the courts lose respect. And the courts should be respected no matter how the judgments go. If we don't like them, we have to obey them, not because we're happy with the decision, but because that is what the court says that we should do. And we believe that every government worth its salt should obey court orders. And I'll tell you, a number of commercial disputes are being resolved outside Nigeria because an increasing number of persons, especially foreign investors, are losing confidence in the ability of our courts to dispense not only even justice, but expeditious justice. And so people prefer to have their disputes settled by arbitration in the UK, in France, and some other destinations. People also sometimes, even some transactions involving Nigerian banks and their customers, agree that their disputes will be resolved under English law. So when there's a dispute, they sue in a court in the UK with respect to loan transactions that took place in Nigeria, utilized in Nigeria. And that should tell you a whole lot. So by so doing, we are confirming that not much confidence is had in our courts. We are confirming that for us to move quicker, the foreigners are more trustworthy. And we lose money. And this should worry all of us. So there's a whole lot of basket of issues we need to talk about if people will respect us. So certain point government has to obey court orders. It must sin not to be above the law. The government must sin so that this court, the judiciary forms part of it's one of the organs of government.
Yeah.
And it is in the best interest, indeed, enlightened interest of the the executive and legislature to ensure that the court is not undermined, that their decisions are obeyed. So I'm sure this will be one of the conversations that we'll be having at the conference. And so as not to preempt the speakers as to appear as if we already have set an agenda for them, or who have drawn conclusions or made recommendations as to what will be the outcome of the conversations. I can only speak generally about this. But I agree with you that it's very imperative that judgments of court are obeyed, that nobody does anything that gives the impression that the courts can say what they want to do and people can do what they want to do. And the courts cannot do anything about it.
You know, this question leads me to asking, government is not solo. It's not the president alone. He has a team he works with. Do you think the recently appointed ministers share this opinion of government obeying court orders to the extent that they can put pressure, so to advise the president and other members of the team when the court order comes out to ensure that it follows through?
I believe that the president believes that they are round pegs in round holes. That's why he appointed them. We will sit back and watch, and he has told them to do what they're meant to do, and that he's watching what they're doing. And no minister will come into office or president and tell you, I'm not going to obey court orders. So we also have to wait and judge them by their actions, not by what they tell us. So they've just been sworn in, that's a few days ago, and assigned portfolios. So we have to sit back and watch what they do, not what they say. And I hope that the zeal with which they spoke during their confirmation about how they are going to do the right thing, fight corruption, ensure that the people enjoy the benefits of good governance will translate into reality. So I'll sit back and watch. I'll adopt a sit-down-they-look at approach.
Okay, but beyond engaging government, what are the other themes and sub-themes that are likely going to play out at this conference?
Well, I've talked about administration of justice, issue burden on security, issue burden on the economy, administration of justice, welfare of the people, then coming about a professional conduct, ethics of the professional, and things surrounding the practice of law. So in broad terms, the specific will be found on the NBA website as the topics that people will discuss and those who will be speaking. And of course, they will also form part of releases to be made to the media as the conference commences officially.
Let's just go back down memory lane. Last year's conference was quite interesting. I mean, there was one of the highlights of that conference was the looting of the conference paraphernalia, the bags. But nobody has heard about what was done to those who were found culpable. I mean, the panel that came up with that report.
A committee was set up.
Yes.
And it looked into that. I would not call it looting, but there was some fracas. There was a fiasco. Some persons got impatient. I don't know the real findings of the committee because I'm not privy to their report. And then decided to take the laws into their hands, broke down and took their conference back because they felt the bags were not coming quickly. So I leave that to the president and the ESCO and the National Executive Committee of the NBA to adopt the committee findings and implement its recommendations. But just to say that we wish that lawyers will be much more patient with conferences and also understand that sometimes things may not move as fast as they want them or in the manner they want them. They only ask for patience.
But is your committee making any plans
we're taking steps also to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And like we say, you don't allow the same stick to pierce your eyes more than once. So we have noticed that as a likely thing that will happen if certain things don't happen. And steps are being taken to ensure that we don't find ourselves in that kind of situation, while at the same time pleading for understanding and patience with our colleagues. If in any way we're not getting it right, such that people may feel pushed to do such a thing, for them to be restrained, to allow us some time to do what we should do, and also know that their complaints will be listened to and entertained, and we all hope that the conference will turn out beautifully very well. Okay,
finally, before we let you go, there's you mentioned something earlier about a communique that will come out from this conference.
We usually bring out a communique at the end of the conference.
What's the plan to ensure the implementation of the recommendations in that communique?
I hope the communique will also embody recommendations on how to ensure compliance, because it becomes meaningless where you set an agenda, you say we need to do this, and you don't have a roadmap, and then MB as an institution does not have an idea of how it intends to ensure that those things. But if you ask me, some of the likely engagement or suggested engagements would be some legislative action where it is about reviewing the law and enacting the law, engagement with government and its agencies, public enlightenment, and also NBA playing its role of being the watchdog of the society, holding governments accountable, speaking out where there is need to ensure that the right thing is done, and also maybe using public interest litigation where there is need for it. And a whole lot of other recommendations, I believe, that people may want to advert their minds to and profile at the conference as to how to ensure that our recommendations are implemented so that they don't form part of mountain volumes of papers that are released, another talk show that are released every day. People go away and then forget that such recommendations were ever made. I would want to see whatever recommendation we made being pushed through to ensure that government at least looks at them and takes them into consideration in formulating policies.
Thanks for staying tuned. A foremost prosecutor with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Rotimi Jacobs, has been speaking about criminal procedure in the country and necessary reforms. He shared his views at a ceremony to mark the launch of a book on the subject. Gathered here are judges, senior advocates, members of the academia, members of the outer bar, professional colleagues, family, friends, and well-wishers of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Rotimi Jacobs, CON, who is celebrating 10 years of active practice at the inner bar, and the launch of his book, Rotimi Jacobs on Criminal Procedure. The book aims to serve as a guide to judges, legal practitioners, and even the academia in their research on criminal procedure, and the author painstakingly went to great efforts to comment on each section of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, as well as a comparative study of the provisions of the Act, the Administration of Criminal Justice Law of States, the Criminal Procedure Act CPA, and the Criminal Procedure Code CPC. But is there a need for this book? The book reviewer, Professor of Law at the University of Lagos, Professor Akim Bello, gives some answers.
The effort by Mr. Rotimi Jacobs, SCN-CON, is unique and necessary because of the depth of the analysis he offered on each provision of the ACJA. It is my submission, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sure you'll agree with me after concluding this review, that this book fills a significant knowledge gap in criminal justice jurisprudence in Nigeria.
After this followed tributes from senior lawyers on the author and his book.
A tribute to you, Rotimi, is a tribute to Chief Gani Fawehemi, at whose feet you started in this profession.
Rotimi has been prosecuting for quite some time, and I'm saying this guidedly. Woe betide that lawyer who meets Rotimi in court, particularly when Rotimi is prosecuting.
The chief launcher, Chief Wole Olanipekun, then led some of the special guests in attendance to unveil the book.
We present this literature, the newest of them, very succinct. Rotimi Jacobs on criminal procedure to the public. Rotimi Jacobs, criminal procedure.
I'm happy that we are celebrating today. This fellow, this Rotimi, has gone through a lot in the society. His life was threatened. His liberty was threatened because he was prosecuting principalities in our society, very dangerous politically exposed persons. But Rotimi stood his ground. He was as constant as the northern star. None of them could move him.
The celebrant speaks about what inspired these publications.
I've been practicing the last 31, 32 years now. And the cases I've lost in the last 3 years is more than the cases I've lost for more than 30 years. Why? Because either no appreciation of the law, whether the by those who are to enforce it, whether for mischief and the inability of judges to get one handy book that will serve as a guide on issues, particularly criminal issues. So I was not happy with the results we are getting in our courts. So I felt that we are feeling the absence of the great Nwadialo. We are feeling the absence of Dr. Akeola Aguda, Elias. Those are the great men that you have practicing book. And judges were being guided by what those great authors, they wrote. That was the passion.
I know that book from the in-house understanding that I have, or the privilege I've had to go through the books, I know that book is going to serve as a one-stop shop for everyone who is interested in the expeditious determination of criminal matters. It's going to resolve a lot of contending issues in criminal jurisprudence.
Called to the bar in 1989, Rotimi Jacobs was one of the pioneer external counsel of the EFCC at the establishment of the agency. He has successfully prosecuted high-profile cases, including the Federal Republic of Nigeria versus Emeka Nwude and 5 others, which was then regarded as the biggest financial fraud scam ever after the convicts defrauded their victim and a Brazilian bank of over $240 million. The fraud led to the collapse of the bank, Banco Nuresto. Rotimi Jacobs also prosecuted the former Inspector General of Police Tafa Balogun and is on record as the only prosecutor who has successfully prosecuted former governors in the history of Nigeria. He successfully prosecuted Chief DSP Alamie Sia, Chief James Ibori, Chief Joshua Dariye, Mr. Jolly Inyame, Chief Lucky Igbinedion, and even the former governor of Abia State, Orji Uzokalu, who was convicted but released from custody following the Supreme Court's interpretation of Section 396, subsection 4 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015. Mr. Jacobs is still prosecuting about 6 former governors whose cases are at different levels of prosecution. And just before we go, let's quickly do a recap of some of the top trending stories from the courtrooms.
We begin with the report that the Kano State Election Petition Tribunal has reserved judgment in a petition filed by the All Progressives Congress APC challenging the victory of Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf of the New Nigeria People's Party NNPP. The 3-member panel, led by Justice Oluyemi Akintan Osadebe, said the tribunal would communicate the date for the judgment after all parties had adopted their final written addresses. The panel sat amid tight security as the Coalition of Northern Civil Society Forum Against Corruption staged a protest against an alleged attempt to bribe a member of the panel, Justice Flora Azinge. Away from the tribunal, the scheduled arraignment of the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, by the federal government on a 20-count charge has failed to hold. The second move was stalled owing to the non-appearance in court of Emefiele's co-defendant, Ms. Datu Ramalan Yaro, who the prosecution claimed took ill on the morning of August the 17th. However, there are indications that the planned arraignment might have been put on hold to enable the defendants explore the option of a plea bargain arrangement with the federal government. In Lagos, the Federal High Court has adjourned till September the 5th, ruling on pending applications filed by different parties in the suit by some aggrieved shareholders of First Bank against FBN Holdings. Justice Akintayo Aluko fixed the date after hearing submissions from parties in the matter. In one of the pending applications, another shareholder of FBN Holdings, Mr. Sunday Aborishade, through his lawyer, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Kazim Gbadamosi, asked the court to set aside the court's interim order granted on July the 29th, directing FBN Holdings not to go ahead with its annual general meeting on August the 15th. He's also seeking to be joined as a party to the suit before the court. Outside the courts, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, has asked the Department of State Services, DSS, to release the suspended chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Mr. Abdulrasheed Bawa, from illegal custody without any further delay. In a statement made available to the media, Falana also asked the federal government to ensure that the rights of Messrs. Emefiele and Bauer are respected by the DSS and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution in the Federal Ministry of Justice, even though the duo had a penchant for disobeying the orders of the courts when they were in office. Two senior advocates, Rotimi Jacobs and Kemi Pinero, have also joined in calling for Bauer's release. They described as unconstitutional the illegal detention of Bauer beyond 65 days without being charged to court. A non-governmental organization, the Citizens Advocacy for Social and Economic Rights, CASA, says the continued detention of Bauer without being charged to court smacks of political vindictiveness by politically exposed persons, many of whom were being investigated by the EFCC under Bauer's watch, but have now been rewarded with more fabulous political appointments. CASA urged the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, to use his position and pedigree as a senior advocate of Nigeria to order the immediate release of Bauer to end the current DSS's reckless disregard for his rights. And we round off with the report that the immediate past president of the Nigeria Bar Association, Olumide Akpata, has disengaged from Templars, a leading law firm where he served as senior partner. A statement by the firm dated August the 24th says the former NBA president formally notified the other partners and management of the firm of his decision to participate in active politics, and in line with the firm's governance protocols, it was agreed that he disengages with effect from Thursday, August the 31st, 2023. It will be recalled that Akpata recently joined the Labour Party in Edo State and expressed interest to contest the forthcoming governorship election in the state.
And that's the program for today. If you missed any part of it, you can find it in past episodes on our YouTube channel. Do also give us feedback via any of our social media platforms. I'm Shola Shele. Thank you for watching and see you next week.